We're on episode 13 of season 1 of Are You Afraid of the Dark? The last episode of season 1 before we start season 2, because we're covering every single episode. This one's called The Tale of the Pinball Wizard, named after the Who song. It's about a kid who gets stuck in a video game, and it's also very clear that the writers of this episode have never played a video game before. Makes it actually kind of fun. They're bumping their heads against the wall and come up with a really creative, enjoyable episode that is also super inaccurate. Written, directed, of course, by the series creator, DJ McHale. And actually, we see right here that DJ McHale, during an interview, said, "This was the most difficult episode out of the series to produce and took the longest to film. They film it inside of a mall." DJ McHale actually pleaded with the crew to break union rules and work an extra day. Oh, naughty, naughty. They unanimously agreed to work a day of overtime to help finish the episode. It proved to be hard to do in their budget, especially since they were at the end of the season where they were low on money. So I guess that's how anthology shows work. I always just suspected that they give them like a season budget and they have to like figure out how to put these episodes together within the season budget. I was reviewing Tales from the Dark Side and some of them just look like they're shot for $2 and then some actually look quite good. So this is an episode told by Gary, the leader of the Midnight Society. And like always in Are You Afraid of the Dark, first scene we get is the Midnight Society, and they usually do some type of skit. In this case, David is sitting next to Betty Ann and he's playing a Game Boy. And Eric then hits a button on the Game Boy that resets it. I had a Game Boy growing up. There is no reset button. These people have no idea what they're doing. Out of curiosity, as I was doing this episode, I decided to see, is there a way to reset a Game Boy? And actually, you hit Start, Select, A, and B simultaneously. Well, in this episode, he just presses one button, so inaccurate, but I was not aware there's a way to reset a Game Boy. I guess it makes sense. In case it freezes or something, though you could always just turn it off, so I'm not sure why you'd have to do this. So this sets up the story for Gary, that this is going to be about video games. And the main character of this story is Ross Campbell, and we see him running around this mall looking for change, which is quite relatable. He's a broke kid trying to get some change for the video arcade. I get it. But he actually steals some from the wishing well and is chased by the security into a guy named Mr. Olson who owns a shop. Well, I think the setting in the mall is really neat and it's great to see the 90s aesthetic. I tried to look at what mall this is set in, but I actually couldn't find it. But they're obviously shooting it either very early in the morning or late at night, since there's a few scenes where people are walking around the mall and then the rest of it takes place after hours. And Mr. Olson has a, well, I'm not sure what type of shop exactly he's supposed to have. He does have 2 pinball machines, then he just has a bunch of random artifacts. Seeing this episode is rushed, this set was definitely completely rushed, since this should be a video arcade. They should have many pinball machines, or at least some type of video games around the store, toys. Instead, it's 2 pinball machines and a bunch of random cheap-looking artifacts. And Mr. Olson has Ross watch the shop as he goes out, as Ross is trying to get Mr. Olson to hire him because he wants to stay around playing this pinball machine. And there's one in the front of the store that we see Ross play, and then there's one in the back, and he's told, do not play the pinball machine in the back. I mentioned before that the writer, so it seems like DJ McHale, did not seem to be a very big gamer, because not only does this not look like a video store, they don't show him playing the pinball machine. Like, you can't really see what it looks like. You see close-ups of his face, close-up of his hands hitting the paddle, but you don't actually get to see what the machine looks like. I have no idea why they decided to do it like this, since it seems like it's a real pinball machine, that they put some overlays on it so you can't see what type of brand it is, like Bailey's. But man, this was frustrating to watch at first. Let me see what the ball looks like. Let me see how the game works, and they just never do that. So he goes back and plays this pinball machine that he's not supposed to play, and then gets greeted by a lady, like a young lady, like a 19-year-old, by the name of Sophie, who was played by Pauly Shannon, and went into star in the movie Dirty Work, with Norm Macdonald as Tony, and Men with Brooms as Joanne, and she's still acting to this very day. Another bizarre casting decision, so Pauly Shannon is 19 years old, and this kid Joe, they don't say his age, and I couldn't find his age either, but he looks to be around 12. So I was scratching my head, and I'm like, oh, they're not going to do a love story between these 2 people, are they? And they actually don't do that. I think they're trying to say that she's way older than him. She's out of high school. He's still a little kid, but he has a bit of a crush on her. I think that's where they're going with this. Or they just decided to cast an actress over 18 so that they can have her work normal hours. Because if she's under 18, they have those pesky child labor laws. Kid Ross is played by Joe Posca, who was in exactly 3 things. This episode, side effects, and David's mother. Then he quit. Sophie asks Ross if her music box is done, and since he has no idea what he's doing, since he doesn't really work here, he's just watching the shop, he tells her to come back. But remember, he played that secret pinball machine, so what's going to happen to him? Well, once he walks out of this store, the mall is completely deserted, and he's transported into some recreation of this pinball machine. That's what I was saying. I don't think they really understand pinball from regular video games to a Game Boy, because he really gets transported into what looks like a fantasy RPG. He starts getting chased by witches. He has to find this crown. He gets chased by these Blues Brother ripoffs who act like Mr. Smith from The Matrix. They are just throwing everything at you. And it doesn't exactly make sense, but it is fun to watch. The worst thing you can do in a television show is be boring. And there will be some episodes we'll cover that are a bit boring. This one is not. It is wacky. It's off the wall. They throw tons of characters at you, and I can see why this would be a very high budget episode. The main cast has 14 people in it, and that's not even counting the multitude of extras. The Mr. Smiths themselves, there's like 15 of them. But it's clear they're in a fantasy RPG, not a pinball machine. While I like playing pinball, who doesn't? They purposely make the rules obtuse as far as how you're actually supposed to beat the pinball machine. Hit the dragon's tail to open up the castle gates, then hit the ball into the castle gates and it gets locked, and then you have to hit the ball into a catapult and it catapults it over the castle and you win. It's actually usually more complicated than that. It's sad that they really stopped making pinball machines, because some of the later ones released in the 90s are my favorite. They have one released in 1999 called Revenge from Mars that has 3D graphics that you can interact with by hitting the ball. And then they stopped making them. So he's transported into the Are You Afraid of the Dark version of King's Quest. He has to find a key in a vault in this mall. And he sees that Sophie has been captured by the main bad guy, and she's dressed up in this princess gown, and he has to now save her. First scare we get is when he's going into these back areas of the mall and a witch jumps out at him. So while this is a Gary story, they tend to be less scary. There are quite a few monsters in this one. I think the witch is the best one. After he escapes her, he gets chased by an executioner. Sophie uses her magic box that she got from the store and causes a tiara to vanish from the witch just as she's about to put on her crown. It doesn't exactly have to make sense to be fun. It's just a fantasy story unfolding in this mall setting. The way he takes out the witch is by throwing marbles at her feet, and then she trips and falls. And it seems like the elevators are supposed to represent the levels of the game. So he'll take an elevator to the 3rd level. That means he's on the 3rd level of this pinball machine video game. That's why I think it would have been so much better if they just had this as him playing an arcade cabinet. He could be playing a beat 'em up like Golden Axe, or slaying witches like Gauntlet. They do some foreshadowing in the beginning of this episode where when he's walking to the shop, we see this water gun that he walks by, and he really takes a liking to it. And they're making it clear this is going to play in later. And that's exactly what happens. That's the ultimate weapon. He's not messing around with his marbles anymore. He takes the water gun and starts shooting the bad guys. And doing some really corny one-liners. I think they're trying to recreate the scene of They Live with this one. Not quite pulling it off.
You are out of here.
No!
And we get the reveal at the end that this entire time, Ross is stuck in this pinball machine. Considering this played out like Dragon Quest, I guess you could say this is a twist. It also has a unhappy ending since we don't see him escape. It seems like he's trapped in this pinball machine forever, and the evil shopkeeper, Mr. Olson, is leering over him. A lot of things play into whether you enjoy an episode or not. The acting. Is the story engaging? Is it well shot? Does it make you think? Well, none of that really plays in here. This one goes, is it entertaining? And the answer is that yes, this episode is entertaining. Is the acting for the little kid the best? No. His one-liners maybe chuckle, but not in a good way. Are they just throwing costumes at you that they probably had sitting around? Sure. But it is fun. You don't know what's going to happen next. They don't rest on their laurels and just have one bad guy like the executioner. They have at least 5 that pop out at you. It's a really fun setting. I love mall settings. There's so much you can do with them. And since it's empty the entire time, you get to see them run through this early 90s mall. And I like the Pinball Wizard. If you want something wacky and fun that makes no sense and is clear it's from someone who's never played a video game before, check this one out. If you want a more sensible, mature story, check out the last one, Prom Queen. They do have a funny ending scene in the Midnight Society, where now everyone, after Gary's story, is scared to play with Game Boy. Because I think it's going to like suck them into the game again. It also would have been cool if there were references to video games or even pinball machines in here. This would have been like the perfect time to do it. Reference Mario, reference King's Quest, which it reminds me the most of. But no, we don't get that. And interestingly enough, one thing you expect in these episodes is halfway through the telling of the story, it'll interrupt and come back to the Midnight Society. So you get the Midnight Society at the beginning and the end, and then halfway through, it'll cut to them, and usually someone will ask a question. Oh, is that the way Mary Beth got out of the castle? And the person telling the story says, oh no, she didn't get out of the castle. She used her magic ring. I like it, and I think it breaks up the story well. It also was probably put in there in case kids got too confused on the storyline. They kind of ask the most basic question, and the person telling the story will reiterate it so they don't get lost. But it's a good way to break up the pace, but they don't do that in here. We saw A.J. Henderson, who portrayed the evil shopkeeper Mr. Olson, 2 episodes before this in the Tale of the Dark Music, and a brief, can we say cameo, seen as the Carnival Barker. Says the members in the Midnight Society take turns playing an original Game Boy. The cartridge looks like Tetris, but the sound effects sound like Donkey Kong, which was never on the original Game Boy or had generic Atari game SFX. They don't show any games in here, which makes me think this was a licensing issue. But they should have figured that out. There's got to be some cheap game that they can show on screen for a few minutes, for 30 seconds, and pay a little bit of money and give them some publicity. Like I said, I think something like Gauntlet would be something good. But maybe they want to use a more modern game. This is 1992, bro. Mortal Kombat had just come out. That would actually be hilarious seeing them play Mortal Kombat. Or Dragon's Lair. They should show Dragon's Lair. But no, Are You Afraid of the Dark being cheap again? And this will be the last time that Eric is here. It even says here the reason for his departure was never explained. So I'm guessing the actor just left. Eric only got to tell 2 stories, the Tale of the Dark Music and Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun. 1 good episode, 1 bad one. But considering he was featured in these a lot, it is a bit of a loss. He's sarcastic, he's kind of mean, and he's exactly what they need to balance out these goody 2-shoes. But he's gone, so. And this also mentions that the plot of this is similar to Tron. But while there's movies and TV shows that have talked about being stuck in a video game, there's never been one that's talked about getting stuck in a pinball machine that acts completely like a video game. Pinball machines are not video games, they're pinball machines. Next up is the first episode of Season 2, The Tale of the Final Wish. And check out our playlist for the other series we've covered: Tales from the Dark Side, Mystery Science Theater 3000, Cowboy Bebop, Pet Shop of Horrors, Monsters and Fear Itself. Thanks a lot.